Hey guys, what is up? My name is Ashley. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to be talking about glutes. I'm going to go over my tips, tricks, and strategies on how to grow and strengthen your glutes. Before we get into this, I would just like to present to you my credentials for teaching you how to grow your glutes. Some of you might think this video is only for the girls because typically girls are the ones who want to grow their glutes. However, that is not true. Not only do developed glutes look good on guys and girls, but they also play a crucial role in strength and functionality. So first things first, I thought we could go over a little bit of anatomy so we have a better understanding of what the glutes are and how they're set up. So your glutes are made up of 3 different muscles. The biggest muscle is the gluteus maximus, and it's also the most superficial muscle of the 3. The purpose of this muscle is to perform hip extension and external rotation of your thigh. It also plays a role in helping stabilize your pelvis and your trunk when you stand on one leg. So some movements that are going to use this muscle would be going from a sitting position to a standing position, going from a bent over to a standing straight up like a hip hinge, walking up the stairs, walking up a hill, and even running. The gluteus maximus is actually very important for running. There was a study done on athletes and it showed that athletes with a bigger gluteus maximus relative to their quads were actually faster. So bigger glutes are gonna make you run faster. I feel like that makes sense too, because I feel like when you watch a lot of track athletes, they all have dump trucks. Moving on, we have the gluteus medius. This lies in between your gluteus maximus and minimus. This muscle is responsible for hip abduction along with internal rotation of your thigh. This is also the muscle that gives that shelf look that most people are trying to achieve. Next, we have the gluteus minimus, which is located beneath the medius. This mostly works with the gluteus medius and it acts as a hip stabilizer, abductor, and a medial rotator of the hip. So now that we have a better idea of what the different parts of the glutes are and their function, let's get into my first tip for growing big, strong glutes. Most of you probably know that warming up your muscle is super important when you're going to be doing a lift. However, it can be a little bit more crucial for your glutes. This is especially the case if you're someone that's a little bit more sedentary. Maybe you're sitting at a desk for work, or you're not super active during the day. Your glutes are constantly in a stretched position when you're sitting and they're not being activated at all. Studies have actually shown that pre-activation of a muscle enhances the muscle output of force. So pretty much if you pre-activate your muscle, you're gonna be able to use more of your strength. Yeah, buddy! Think of this kind of like waking up your glutes. If you don't wake them up when you go to do, say, a leg press, or a squat, the other legs in your muscles are going to compensate because your glutes aren't being activated and used as much. There's many different ways that you can activate your glutes before you do a workout. Some of my favorites include step-ups. These are going to target your gluteus maximus. They're pretty easy to set up. You can do them on a bench, on a box, on a platform. And if you feel a little bit unstable or off balance, you can always hold on to something for more stability. With these, you probably don't need to use any weight. As long as you focus on your mind-muscle connection and you get a good burn, you'll be all set. Another warm-up I sometimes do is a lying hip abduction. This is gonna help target your gluteus minimus and medius. Now for this, you can use a band if you need to. Personally, for me, just fighting gravity is enough, as you can see in this video. Another variation of this, if that's a little bit too hard, because that does engage your core a little bit and requires some balance, is if you use a platform for your hand, it makes it a little bit easier. If neither of these are your cup of tea, you can also do some standing hip abduction. Just take a band and set it up on either a rack or a bench, or you could even do banded side steps too. That also works and it's gonna target the gluteus minimus and medius as well. Aside from activating your glutes, warming up is just super important in general. Personally, the only time I've injured myself is when I didn't warm up properly. So learn from my mistakes, always do your warm-ups. All right, now let's get into the actual lifting. Personally, I think that compounds are so important for hypertrophy. There's definitely gonna be some people that disagree with me on this, but hear me out first. So a compound lift is a movement that uses more than one muscle group and more than one joint. And I'm not just talking free weight compounds, I'm talking all compounds. So it could be a back squat, a hack squat, a pendulum squat, whatever machine you have. It can be any of those as long as it's using like your quads, your glutes, your hamstrings, your core. Those are all compounds. If you think about it, with a compound lift, you're going to be able to lift more weight because you're using more muscles. This is super important for overloading your muscle and getting it used to being under a heavier load. Something that is crucial when talking about using compounds for hypertrophy is making sure that you're choosing the right compound for you. Your build and mobility are both things that can limit the effectiveness of a certain lift. Getting a full range of motion and a full stretch on the muscle you're targeting is super important for hypertrophy. If you don't have good mobility, then maybe you're not going to be able to complete that full range of motion and get that full stretch. For example, I will use myself. I happen to have very poor hip mobility and also have relatively long femurs. If you've been watching my videos, you already know what I'm gonna say, but if you're new here, I struggle a lot with squat depth. It has taken me 3 years of squatting to finally be able to hit an acceptable depth. However, I still cannot go completely ass to grass, and who knows if I ever will. Anyways, back squats are not necessarily going to be the most effective for hypertrophy of my quads and my glutes because I'm not getting that full flexion. I'm not hitting that full stretch, that full range of motion. So for me, a back squat is not going to be optimal. I recently switched to using a pendulum squat as my compound for my leg days. This allows me to get a full squat, full range of motion, full flexion of my hip and my knee, allowing for that full stretch, and I have been loving it. When I first started doing it, I was super weak because I was hitting muscles and a level of depth that I had never hit before, but it's definitely a change for the better. I'm getting used to it and I feel so much better after doing these. If you don't want to totally abandon, say, doing back squats, even if they don't work the best for you, you can also just make some adjustments. This could be elevating your heels on some plates, which will probably allow you to go a little bit deeper, or you could even buy squat shoes that are going to elevate your heels. That's also an idea. Another super important factor when talking about compounds is going to be your stability. Some free weight movements definitely require more stability than, say, a machine. Overall, I am a huge advocate for free weight movements and I think they're super important. However, if the stability demand of an exercise is limiting the load that you can use, it might not be the most beneficial for hypertrophy. If stability happens to be something that you struggle with, you can either make adjustments or use alternatives. For example, if back squats are just a little bit too unstable for you and you're not using the load you could if you were stable, you could try using a Smith machine or even switch it up completely and do, say, a hack squat. Now for adjustments, if, say, Bulgarian split squats are a little bit unstable for you, just do it on a bench inside a rack so that you can hold on to the rack for some more stability. Same with a step up, do it near a rack or a pole so you can hold on to just balance yourself a little bit more. For me right now, personally, due to an injury in my back, doing free weight RDLs is not optimal. I've personally found that doing Smith machine RDLs right now is allowing me to go into a more stretched position, load more weight on the muscle, and push closer to failure without hurting myself. I do think stability is super important though, and I don't think you should just neglect it. However, in the meantime, I don't think making some adjustments is a bad idea. So overall, I think compounds are super important and you should do them first in your lift when you're the freshest and the strongest. However, I do think that there is obviously a time and place to do isolation movements. These isolation movements are really going to help you target the specific part of the muscle you want to work and make sure that you're hitting it. Personally, for glutes, some of my favorite isolation movements are glute kickbacks, hip abductions, and back extensions. With these, I think there's a lot of people on the internet that are going to try to tell you they found the perfect way to do it. I personally don't agree with those. You can take what they say with a grain of salt, try it out. However, I think at the end of the day, mess around with foot placement, mess around with how straight or bent your back is, and just find what works best for you. Everyone's built a little bit different. Not everyone's going to have the same exact form on every lift. Another tip I would have for these is make sure you're going heavy enough and progressively overloading, but also making sure you're getting that full stretch, making sure you're controlling the negatives are also going to be really beneficial. And these glute isolation movements that I mentioned are my favorites and they're what I like to do right now because I want that shelf look. So I'm going for gluteus medius isolation work after my compounds. I personally find my gluteus maximus to be very easy to hit, but if you are not the same way, if you're the opposite, you could do step ups after instead. Okay, so moving on to my third tip, training frequency. If you want to grow your glutes, you need to make sure that you're hitting them enough each week. Hitting a muscle 3 times in a week is going to give you more hypertrophy than hitting it once. That is, as long as you're recovering between your training sessions. I do recognize though that training legs 3 times a week sounds crazy and might be unattainable for a lot of people. I'm with you there. However, something you can do is add glutes into your upper body days or your other days. Maybe you have a core day or a cardio day. I personally added into either my back day or my chest day. This way you don't have to dedicate multiple days just to legs and you can still train your upper body as much as you were before. This is especially good for people like me. I work long days, so I'm only able to work out about 4 days a week. So doing legs 3 times a week is pretty much impossible for me. So adding it into my upper body days has been a really good way of hitting it more frequently without affecting my other lifts. I also think that doing glutes on an upper body day can be beneficial for some other reasons. I don't know if it's just me, but leg days are always way more exhausting. I feel like upper body days just take a little bit less out of you. So if you're doing glutes on those days, you might be able to put a little bit more energy into your glute exercises than you can on a leg day. Also, to kind of counteract this, on your leg days, you can do glutes first. Personally, for me, it feels a little bit backwards. I'm always more drawn to doing quads first for some reason, but if you do glutes first, you're gonna be able to put more energy, you're gonna be more fresh, more strong, and it's gonna benefit you in your lifts. So pick whatever works best for you, but increasing that frequency and making sure that you're recovering is going to help you grow your glutes. Moving on to my fourth tip, alternating heavy and light days. Everyone knows that progressive overload is pretty much the key to hypertrophy. Increasing weight over time is relatively easy when you're a beginner and maybe even intermediate as well. However, once you get to a more advanced level, just adding another 5-pound plate or another rep gets a little bit more difficult. Something I've found super beneficial for progressive overload for me is alternating heavy and light days. What I mean by this, say I'll use squats for an example. On my heavy day, I'll do a weight that I can do for maybe 3, 4, or even 5 reps. And then my next leg day, I'll do a lighter weight that I can do for 10 to 12 reps. Even though a really low rep range isn't necessarily optimal for hypertrophy, I think it is optimal for progressive overload in this situation. If you think about it, on that heavy day, not just your legs, everything, your back, your core, your tendons, your joints, everything is getting used to being under that heavier load. So the next time you go to lift, if you're lifting something that's 30 pounds lighter, your body's used to being under a heavier weight. So you're more likely to be able to get that lighter weight for a couple extra reps. Another variation of this, if you don't want to dedicate a whole day to going heavy, is just doing a heavy top set. This is the same idea. Your body's getting used to being under that heavier weight, but also I think this can help you mentally. For me, if I do a heavy top set and then I drop the weight to say my normal working weight, that working weight automatically feels lighter than it normally does because I was just under a much heavier weight. I feel like I almost always get 1 or 2 extra reps because of this. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of her. You probably have, and if you haven't, you should look her up. But Jen Thompson, a literal bench legend, does heavy holds. This is literally when she just unracks a weight on bench that is heavier than she can actually bench, and she holds it for 15 seconds. She does this because it helps strengthen her stabilizers. I think that this can kind of be applied to what I'm saying as well. When you're under that heavier weight, you're increasing your strength everywhere and getting everything in your body used to being under that heavier load. This personally is one of the ways that helped me increase both my bench and my squat. And if you know any of my videos, you know that bench is something I could not progress on for the longest time. And this has made a huge difference. Okay, my last point is something that a lot of you might not think of. This might not be relevant for some if you train upper body and core. However, there's definitely a group of people who only focus on their lower body. And there's definitely a group of people that I belong to that do not train their core. If you want to focus more on your lower body, that is totally okay. However, eventually it's going to catch up to you that you're not training your upper body, and it's going to affect your lower body workouts. If you think about it, eventually you're going to be able to RDL more weight than you can, say, hold in your hands or carry over. Or you're going to be able to goblet squat more weight that you can hold right here. Back to my RDL example also, your back is super important. Doing RDLs engages your lats. My lats are always sore after I do RDLs, so you need to have a strong enough back to hold those dumbbells in place while you do your movement. There's also a lot of glute movements that are going to engage your core and you might not even realize it. Pretty much any movement that isn't a single joint isolation is gonna use your core. Obviously, a free weight movement is gonna engage your core more, but even say a pendulum squat or a hack squat, it's also going to engage your core. If you're going heavy and hard and you're really pushing, especially on those last few reps, you're gonna be bracing no matter what, and that is your core. We also talked about stability earlier and how that can be a limiting factor in what exercises are effective for you. If you have more core strength developed, you're gonna be more stable, and then you're gonna be able to put more load on your glutes in movements that require any type of stability. More load is gonna be more growth. And I'm not just saying you need to have a strong core or a strong back. You wanna have overall a strong and developed upper body. You need a strong back, strong core, strong arms, grip strength, everything. It's all gonna play a role in being able to overload and add more weight into all your movements. Now, obviously, with all of these tips, you also need to have your nutrition in check and you need to be bringing some serious intensity to the gym. You need to be going to or close to failure. Now, training intensity and nutrition are something I could do a whole video on, so I'm not gonna dive into that. However, if you're getting your protein, you're getting your calories, and you're going hard in the gym, you're bound to be cheeked up if you follow my advice. I hope that you found some of this interesting and helpful. I personally have learned so many tips and tricks from people in the gym, people on the internet, and it's been super beneficial for my training. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this video. I hope that something I've mentioned can be beneficial and make a difference in your training. I definitely have so much to learn, but at the same time, I feel like I've learned so much throughout the past couple of years of lifting weights. And I wanted to come on here and share with you what I've learned so that maybe you don't have to learn it quite as slowly as I did. And if any of you guys have any helpful tips on how to grow your glutes, feel free to leave it in the comments. Anyone watching this, you should also check out the comment section and see what everyone else has to offer. Personally, this video was super fun for me to make, so if you guys like this type of content, please let me know in the comments. I would love to make another one. I do plan on doing more in the future, so I hope you guys liked it. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. It truly means so much to me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. And that is all, so I will see you guys next time. Bye.